In my videos, I often claim that there is no possibility for a political solution in our currently miserable situation. So, in this video, I will try to explain exactly why. What I will explain in this video is not a fictional conspiracy theory. I will talk about the true mechanism in which our Western world system is controlled through. I will talk about who is pulling the strings and how. I will explain exactly why there is this illusion of democracy, illusion of choice, illusion of freedom, or illusion of change for the better of the nations in the West. I hope this video will help you understand and realize how serious the situation is, and that there is no possibility for a political solution in any of our Western countries. So, as some of you are hoping that any current Western political parties, political movements, any politicians, or our real-life demonstrations, protests on the streets are able to fix the situation, or that it will allow a sane, independent people to reach true position of power in our countries, then I must say at the end of the day, you will all end up disappointed, as we all have so far in the last 20 years. And don't let anyone deceive you and tell you nonsense like, after 4 years in the next elections we will reach true position of political power and fix our country. Or, just wait, the number of supporters, our people, the number of voters is growing, we will win at the end. This is a complete nonsense. This is a reason why people like you stay passive and are waiting for a change to come, wasting precious time which we do not have, because each year we are weaker, lesser in numbers, compared to those who flood into our countries from abroad and breed like rabbits. And also indoctrination of the younger generations is progressing to the point where we, the indigenous citizens, will lose control over political arena in our countries because of demographics and the whole of the Western madness. Pretty much everything that our like-minded people have done in the past 12 years is just a symbolic and meaningless fight for our future, with the symbolic victories. We may march on the streets with the flags in the thousands for the next hundreds of years and longer, but it won't change anything. It's just a symbolic stance to show the world that we are still alive. By continuing this symbolic fight for our future, without defined goals, nobody except for myself that I am aware of has proposed a realistic plan, a realistic solution. So how do others plan to secure our future if we are headed nowhere? But if you truly wish to stand up for your future, for the future of your children, then we need clearly defined goals, objectives. Then I need you to stand up with me in the realization of our plan, which is the only peaceful and realistic solution to the miserable situation in our Western countries. Or in the end, we are all going to lose the struggle for our future existence. The link to our plan will be in the video description below. I also encourage everyone to share this video with anyone who is still deluded about the concept of a political solution in our Western countries. Aware people must acknowledge and focus on doing something meaningful for our future instead of wasting time and trying to wage this war for the survival of our nations by aiming straight into politics, because currently we do not have any real prospects towards obtaining control over the political arena in any of our Western countries. There is not a single truly independent country in the West. And the most obvious visible evidence for this is visible in countries' national debt. This debt is the strings, and we cannot get rid of them even while having absolute power in our country, without committing economic suicide on the international level. Remember that your country is not the only one on the planet, and even if you magically break out from those strings and of endless debt, if you step out of the line, every other country on the planet which still operates within this debt slavery system will take advantage of you. And there is not a single country on the planet which is able to turn their back on the rest of the world without destroying itself in the process. But about that later. Right now let's focus on the details. The current unofficial but the true political system in our Western countries is currently a corporatism. And this is a fact. Every well-informed person who does not live with their eyes closed will admit that. Now I have made a very concise and simplified schematic of our current world system, exposing the mechanism and controllers behind it. If you want to verify whether what I say here is true or not, simply do your own research and follow the money. And as I have said, forward this video to whoever claims otherwise, to anyone who is trying to convince you of aiming into politics without a solid plan, funding, and other necessary preparations. So let's start from the first point. Our nations, citizens, that's where we are divided like never before. Multicultural societies dominated by an overwhelmingly promoted and protected agenda of the left. People with different ideologies, cultures, religions, values, often hostile and hateful to each other, all mixed together on the base level of our society. They are too busy struggling with surviving and dealing with the trials of life itself to focus on any higher ideas or to form any proper opposition to the manipulative ruling elites. This is where the front line is, between reason and madness. This is where the like-minded people, independent thinkers, are a minority, oppressed by the dominating number of ignorant masses, supported by the media and the establishment. And from this chaos, people believe they are able to somehow awaken the majority of their nation, convert ignorant people to the side of the reason, and through elections, assuming they are not rigged, obtain a true political power in your country, get to the government, which is the number 2 on the list. Now, some facts about our nations to consider before we proceed any further. The majority of citizens in our nations are not really intellectually capable of independent critical thinking. They also have different priorities in life, which distracts them from serious matters of politics. This is where the NPC stereotype comes from. People lack of independent critical thinking. It's a fact. Regular people vote for whoever they are being told to vote for by the media. And the media will promote whoever they are told to promote in a well-crafted propaganda by whoever owns the media, directly or indirectly. It's the media which shapes the image of political parties or political candidates. They might promote someone as good or bad, as someone who wants to give, offer a lot to the people, or as someone who is for or against the establishment. It really depends on the public opinion. If the populace or the citizens wishes for someone more socialist, more nationalistic, more of a giver or a taker, the proper candidate is shaped and presented based on the voice of the public opinion, and the media are selling such candidate to the nation. It all depends on the majority of the nation. If the nation is too much disappointed by currently ruling elite, then they will present a replacement, for example a candidate for voters who adopt a rebellious outlook. A good example is President Trump, an anti-establishment guy for the rebellious masses, and his victory was not a coincidence. And everything that you have heard or have seen before the elections was an act, a political show for the masses. But at the end, the US population was presented with the two major puppets to choose from, and they made their choice. So, to the majority of people on our side who still believe in a political solution, here are some questions for you. Question 1. Do you have any trustworthy political party in your country? Question 2. Do you think they do have any chance at obtaining true political power, the true political power in your country, in the next 8 or maybe 16 years? Question number 3. Are you willing to risk all those years of waiting, sacrificing precious time and putting your bet on those politicians or political parties that they're going to save your future and fix your country? Question number 4. Even if they obtain true political power in your country, do you think after those 8 to 60 years or so, they will still be able to fix your country? Or maybe irreversible damage to your nation have already been done? If you are so positive that your candidate or candidates will truly have a victory one day in the elections against all the odds, the manipulation of the mass media, against the majority, against the indoctrinated voters, against the competition with the social programs to bribe the voters with, against alien voters, if you understand what I mean, the disinformation campaigns, and even without a sufficient funding for the campaign. If you believe that your candidates might still win and also maintain their word and fulfill what they promised afterwards, well, okay, then let's proceed to further tools of this system which are designed to control your nation, to control your government. Do you know that major international corporations usually have more power and influence over your country than your own government does? Especially over your nation. The government is a sphere of puppet politicians, a puppet show for the masses, but they are influenced by needs and instructions from above. So, in this hierarchy of power, the international corporate giants who have lots of money and huge impact on your state economy have much more to say in the decision-making process than your own politicians. They just do this behind the scenes. Because if politicians do something very drastic against the interest of the corporation, this will have a direct impact on the state economy, the economy of the country, and at the end on the voters, on the population. But still, corporations are the tools of the lowest rank. They don't have any super immunity, nor any absolute power over the government of your country, even if they have a lot to say about shaping the policy. Because they are able to shape the ideas in minds of voters, mostly to the mass media and social media online. Now we are heading to the area of institutions above our countries, in the chain of command with the immunity. Those cannot be punished by the government without deadly consequences for the entire state's economy, or its existence in the global economic arena. Number 5 are the central banks of our countries. They do not give orders directly, but they make sure that things work in order, or they do not. They are the centers of distribution for money to our national banks, to our governments, but those institutions already have a immunity. Because if the government were to take political action against the central bank, or would change some regulations against the policy of the major banks, which is number 6 on the list, then the major banks have tools to destroy the state's economy in days. The strongest pressure tool which they may use to punish the country is simply to demand from the rebellious state to pay its debts. And every politician, no matter how rebellious, fears of that. If the state refuses to pay its debts, this will mean an instant bankruptcy of a country, with all the consequences that carries, especially on the international arena. And the government will face the backlash from citizens, not the bankers. So now you understand why our countries cannot be free without deadly consequences for the nation, why our governments and politicians are not independent, and why they are taking orders from above. But the media influential corporations and the banks are not the only tools to control our politicians or our nations. But more about that later. There are 4 major central banks. For example, the Federal Reserve, European Central Bank, one bank for one continent more or less. There is an institution which is akin to the central bank of all central banks, which most people are not aware of. It's far more important than the Federal Reserve in the US. And this bank is responsible for coordinating cooperation between chains of almost all the banks across the world. It's called the Bank for International Settlements. This bank is like the world headquarters for all central banks from all Western nations. And from here, we are heading into something very controversial. To point number 8. If you do all the research from the official sources, if you follow the money, at the end you will discover that all the banks, especially those at the top, are privately owned by a few families. I don't know how many exactly. I have heard it's 7 of them. So do not blame bank chairman, a CEO. They only work there and take orders from some people from above. We don't know too many details about those people. We do know some names of the founders of those banks or financial groups from the early 20th century. But a lot has changed since then, and we really do not know who exactly those people are. But what we do know for sure is that those few families have almost the entire Western world in their pocket by the debts which our countries own to them, by money which our governments have borrowed from them, and which they produce out of the thin air. Every single person in our countries, me, you, our future children, all of our future generations, we all own money to those families at the top. Our children are being born with the debt to those families at the top because of our countries being in debt to them. Which means they own us. They are above the law. They are above every single one of us. Personally, I could even live with that in peace if they weren't so incompetent at leading this world. Unfortunately, we can clearly see that they intentionally aim at our destruction through examining their own actions and the logical outcomes of those actions. Some say they want to produce a perfect slaves and nations easy to control. And that's why they are doing that. They want to create nations of slaves, automaton workers, who will never again be able to unite, organize, and stand up against them in the future. Absolute power, absolute control. That's what they want. People to serve them forever. Well, I must admit that this goes in line with a certain so-called conspiracy theorist, but I am sure it's just a pure coincidence. So, never mind about that. I mean, there are certain subjects which cannot be discussed in public videos like those. But also please keep in mind that all the mechanics which I presented so far, with all the banks, with the few families at the top owning all of this is not a conspiracy theory. Those are facts. And this endless debt slavery system, all those mechanics so far, it is actually working because our people are selling their own souls for money to serve and blindly follow orders from those people at the top. I may also add here that the current monetary system is heading towards its end, and they are fully aware of that, the ruling elite, international ruling elite. So after the next crisis, which is coming by the way, economic crisis, it is most likely that they will introduce a world digital currency. A high possibility exists that it will be Libra. To support my claim, I may say that companies like PayPal, Visa, and many more financial companies and institutions are investing into this project. This project is owned by the Facebook officially, by the way. Even if it appears illogical, because they are it's like they are investing into creation of their own competition on the market, which will eventually drive them out of the market. So it doesn't really make much sense why they are investing into this Facebook digital currency. This only means those companies cooperate together in interests of a sort of a mutual agenda, which is the creation of a world digital currency for everyday use. And the motivator to push people into such an action, like buying Libra, would be increasing inflation, which will skyrocket in our Western countries in the next crisis, where our savings will be losing on value. So in order to save them, people will start purchasing and using Libra. But those are only my assumptions. Consider yourself warned, and I suggest you start talking about those scenarios with your friends, because if it's true, then another objective of our international masters will be successfully achieved. Banks are not the only reason why those families control our Western world. The second tools for absolute control are investment corporations. The idea behind this tool is to control the national economic infrastructure in our countries. The four investment giants are BlackRock, Fidelity Investments, State Street Corporation, and the Vanguard Group. If you dig deeper into them, they are almost all one company, because they are shareholders of each other's assets. So they operate and coordinate as one, even if formally they are separate companies. They are basically one big company, and they directly or indirectly control over 180 major corporations on the planet. And they also control 2/3 of the world media. If you want to verify this, as I said, do your own research and follow the money. And how do they work? They are always major shareholders, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, by a satellite investment companies. For example, BlackRock may own 1% of company X, but he may also have a huge control over smaller companies, ABC, which are the remaining 59% asset owners of company X. In this way, those top investment corporations are able to control most of our national industry and companies across the Western countries. And why is it bad for us? Because let's say independent, right-minded politician will reach true position of power in your country, and they genuinely want to change things for better. And let's say the international masters do not want to take drastic action by banks against your country in order to punish your rebellion. They can use the influence of those investment companies to sabotage businesses and economy of your country from the bottom, which will affect the life of regular people who will lose jobs and who will have to pay more for basic necessities under the new independent government leadership, which will turn the ignorant masses, majority of the citizens, majority of the voters, against the independent politicians and ruling party. A regular person will think that they elected a government which has damaged their state economy, their comfortable way of life on credit. And this actually goes in line because all the right-sided political parties and politicians, they are being known for being more reasonable and responsible in management of the country. So it means they are aiming to saving money, and this is not good. This is not what the people want. People want social support. So you see pretty much how it's gonna backfire against the ruling government which actually will want to fix the country by less expenses and more responsible policy. And also add to this that the media will create a propaganda against the independent government, blaming it for rising living costs. People will buy it, and such government will be quickly removed from power in nearest elections, or maybe they even will rebel people against the government on the streets. So, if independent government, independent ruling party will gain true political power in your country, then by the media and whole the system, they will motivate people, the majority of your citizens, to either replace this government, this ruling party, democratically, or to motivate them to riot against such government, to replace it faster. Now please process all the information which I presented to you in this video. And do you understand why a political solution doesn't exist? Why even if you become the president or you have the majority of your government, your power and possibilities won't be sufficient to liberate your country from this system. And don't forget that most of your national industry was most likely sold and moved to some other countries. So your country is addicted to imports in one way or another. And if your country is economically punished, or if it goes bankrupt, it will be an end for your government capabilities to do anything. They are able to perform all the necessary manipulation with your currency, with the state economy, with your reputation by the state media. So manipulation with the state population itself. You won't even be able to import medicines to your country for old and sick people. People will be dying because of your state going bankrupt. We are completely enslaved, and the international ruling elite can do whatever they want with us, because we are at the mercy of our current world economy. And if your country steps out of the line, it will end up like Venezuela or Greece. There are also third-party tools which I haven't mentioned yet in this video, because they are not directly under their control. Indirectly, yes. For example, intelligence agencies of certain countries who operate offshore, abroad, in some other countries, in the foreign countries, they can start a revolution in a country by using secret services of one country against another. And I guarantee you that if you will try to liberate your country, to stand out of the line, reject the international banking system, to allow your country go bankrupt, to elect and allow an independent government to rule over your people, over your country, I guarantee you that there will be other countries attacking you from all the directions. They won't even let you leave you in peace in your agonizing economic debt. There will be secret services operating in your country trying to organize a rebellion against you. There will be many types of attacks, and there is no way that you can defend yourself alone against them. If you would like to liberate your country, you will have to somehow make deals on the international level with the other countries. You need to rebel at least few countries at once who are united by the same agenda, cooperate to oppose the system. Then it might have a chance to work, and it must be at least one major country involved, like maybe Russia, United States, China. Of course, the revolution or takeover in the US is impossible. It's out of the question. It's the most secure secure country for the most secure tool of them, United States, to control all other Western countries, which they cannot afford losing, and they are definitely secured in that manner. If you want to learn the details, check my material about the civil conflict scenario. But yes, that's pretty much how it works. Like, secret services will be involved, and in the worst possible scenario, they are even able to organize a military intervention in your country, probably under the excuses of like restoring democracy or any other poor excuse like that. So even if the nationalistic party takes control in Britain, or somehow magically, I don't know how they even gonna break through those earlier mechanics, those earlier shields, there is still possibility of military intervention from the other countries under any excuse which they're gonna come up with, and they got media to propagate it. There is no way out of those chains, even through acquiring true political power in your country, without sentencing your country to self-destruction. If you think you know someone else more competent in understanding the world economy and the mechanism behind the system, go ahead and share this video with them. Tell them to debunk it. I welcome any challenge. But in the meantime, I will remind everyone that we hold a plan for a realistic solution. We must unite and organize on the international level to oppose this madness in the West and the destruction of our nations, the destruction of our culture, civilization. I know how to do that, but I cannot do it without people supporting me in realization of this operation. I cannot do it without people like you. If you decide to stay passive as an aware person, when I call you to help me in the realization of our plan for the future of our children and nations, then we are going to lose everything. Take it very seriously. Spread the word. Reach as many people. Study the plan. And if you do not have any objections, please help me. Details should be in the description under this video. Thank you for your time.